for the couple, I could see that there was a couple of people that aren't part of the Wilder Future project. So just to kind of give you a little bit of information about what we've been doing for the last 18 months. The Wilder Future for Warwickshire project is a national lottery heritage funded project that Warwickshire Wild Otters Trust have been running since January 2020. And the aims of the projects are to provide training in conservation, ecology, environmentalism, and marketing, communications and campaigning to a group of volunteers who are all generally aged between 18 to 35. So if you're not part of the Wilder Future project at the moment, but you'd like some more information about it, then please do feel free to email me at the end of this session. I'll put my email address in the chat. There's some of these webinars like this one that are open to the public, but there's also plenty of other content that's just exclusive to people that are part of the project, including kind of practical sessions. So there's definitely kind of an incentive to join up. And yeah, we're about halfway through, more than halfway through the project now. We've got another 9 months to go. So there's like plenty of stuff for you guys still to get involved with if you'd like to. So just quickly to say that I am recording this session. So if you would like your face not to be in the recording, then please turn off your camera. And it will be available to you guys after the session if you want to go back over it. So for the moment, I'm going to be quiet and hand over to Paul, who's going to run the next hour or so for us. If you do have any questions, we're going to leave it all to the end, or you can kind of pop them into the chat as they come into your head, and we'll talk through them at the end for you. So thanks, guys, and over to you, Paul. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Are you going to do the screen or do I?
You should be able to.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Paul Turton. I'm the UK WAT Conservation Officer as of January this year. I'll tell you a little bit about what is involved in terms of my personal sightings, a bit about the behaviour and pattern of the Eurasian otter, the one that we have in this country, and also about the rehab side of things down in North Devon. So there's plenty of videos, plenty of images. Okay. Okay, so my role, various things. I personally like being out and about myself, so I'm not going to be tied up to too much paperwork in the office or bits and pieces like that. So basically, it's to raise awareness of the otter that we have. Winter time, autumn time, and that is when it gets busy with the cubs that have been abandoned due to the high river levels. That takes up a lot of the time, transporting them around the country, getting them to North Devon for rehab. I deal with the adoption side of things, the paperwork and certificates for that. Here for advice, talks like this, and as it says, not too much paperwork. So I'm down in Bournemouth on the south coast. So this is kind of my knowledge and my experiences about the ones that I've seen down here. So if we go back to 2016, February, there's a video clip here of an adult mum with 3 cubs that were going up Stour about 4 miles away from Christchurch Harbour. So this is just after dawn. The camera's flicked into normal colour mode now, and they're basically heading upstream back to the halt. Now I don't know what happened to the adult mother there, but one of the cubs, the female cubs there, she then took over the same territory. So I was lucky that I got to know her quite well. So we had some really sort of close moments I don't think you'd normally get with just seeing an otter face to face. So a bit about the range there. I worked out from the Christchurch Harbour upstream, about 7 miles of river, a few still waters, nothing major, got the whole of Christchurch Harbour. And according to the local newspaper that a couple of garden ponds have been raided of various goldfish and koi. So that kind of makes up their range down here. So this is Eurasian otter. It's the only one that we have in this country. So the ones you see up in Scotland are still Eurasian otters, but they need the fresh water to wash off the seawater from their coats. Average length is 1 metre to 1.4, 10 to 14 kilos. They live for around about 3 to 4 years. I know that when the dead otters from RTAs are sent to Cardiff University, I think there was only about, out of them, I think 10% of them that they did had only lived, I think, 5 years or above. So lifespan in the wild is fairly short, really. They're sexually mature from 2 years old. So chances are each mother will only perhaps have one lot of cubs, and the number of cubs born is roughly between 2 to 3. Right, a few other facts. The fur is really thick. It's also quite, feels a little bit oily after you've touched it. So 2 different layers. When you see the otter dive underwater, you see all the bubbles that are trapped in that coat come out, and there's a clip later on to show that. But it's really thick, that little shorter layer. Holding its breath on 30 seconds average, depends on the depth of the river. It will dive. It can dive, if you spook an otter and it wants to disappear, it can dive for easily 250, 300 meters and be gone. But if it's foraging, it'll tend to dive to the bottom, find something and come up eating it. They're not natural swimmers to begin with. They literally have to be dragged into the water by the mothers, by the scruff of the neck. But once they are in the water, then they absolutely love it. At the rehab centre, you'll see later on that we kind of have to like take them through stepping stones to get them used to the water if we get a really young one in. So it's starting off with a small bowl of water, getting to a shallow pool, a pond, eventually until they get used to it. The reason why they were nearly extinct, obviously during the 50s, was the pesticides that were used in farming and etc. and agricultural practices. This all got into the rivers, into the food chain, and pretty much nearly wiped them out. How to tell a difference? Okay, there's a couple of ways. A lot of people will spot an otter, and then because of the way it travels and it moves, might think that 100 meters away, further downstream or upstream, they've seen another otter and count it as 2. There's a couple of possible ways. So the first one is the colourings under the throat. You've got the white patch there. That's unique to every otter. Sometimes when they're wet, it makes it a bit easier, as in this one. This almost looks a bit like a half of a footprint. So that is one way of telling the difference between otters. The other way is their teeth. So here we have a couple of shots. It's kind of the 5 little molars that go along the front there that are the ones that you can tell, they're the ones you see most often. So if there's any chipped ones, any broken teeth, any marks like on the nose, sometimes you can tell the difference. But that is the 2 main ones that I would go by. A lot of people say that this otter had a broader head, therefore it's a male, or this one had a smaller face, with a thinner head, therefore it's a female. That's absolutely nonsense in the way of trying to sex it or whatever. But the only real surefire way, roughly, is to look at teeth and look at the throat markings. If you can work out that, you can work out how many different otters you've got. We had an otter come up our stretch, I think about 18 months ago, that absolutely had no teeth whatsoever. This is the one here. It was only seen the once by a spotter, but you can see, I don't know why the teeth have fallen out or how it's managing to catch the prey, or whether it's just choosing the smaller fish and perhaps just munching on them whole. But whether it's perhaps in the teeth decay or something, I don't know. But absolutely no lower teeth in the jaw there. But it still looked healthy. It was average size, so it was obviously doing well. Okay, otters in the UK, they've pretty much reached every county. I think they're in the western part of Essex now, so that covers all the counties in the UK. I did a little bit of research earlier just to see whether they've gone into the Isle of Wight down here. So we've got the Solent in between Dorset, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and it's about, I think it's between 2 and 4 miles distance on the narrowest and the widest parts. So that means that obviously the otters, even if it's for the narrowest part, the otters managed to swim for 2 miles to visit the Isle of Wight. I think they first noted some markings and some spraying about 3 or 4 years ago, but I think they've mentioned last year in the news that they definitely got possibly a breeding pair of otters on the Isle of Wight. So they have pretty much bounced back to most counties in the country. Okay, one of the things that I've noticed is the otter's ability to be very good with its timings. Now this video I'll run through, but it was a Monday afternoon at 4:30. I watched the otter come out of the holt, go upstream for about 250 meters, reach a couple of spaces on the bank. This is a spraint area here. That lump of grass in the middle is a regular spraint area. And I watched it one Monday afternoon, was lucky enough to be in the same spot following week on the same Monday, and it repeated the exact same movement. So here we go. So it's coming out of the water. So this was filmed with a GoPro because I'd seen it the week before. I took the gamble that it would do repeat exercise. So the GoPro is placed in front of you. So this is 4:30 on a Monday afternoon. Just to the right-hand side where the otters disappeared is a caravan park for mobile homes and that would have been in full. So you get pretty much any time of the day, really. Communication, to listen out for the otters. I'm sure probably most of us have heard what a kingfisher sounds like. It's a very high-pitched whistle. With the otters, you get more of a singular pip or a singular squeak. Again, it's the high-pitched, and they use it as a kind of like a contact call. So this is the younger cub in front of the trail camera. As you watch through the clip, you'll see a pair of eyes in the darkness at the back. That's the adult mother. Oh. There we go. There's the eyes at the back in the middle. And that was lucky enough that I got some friends that got a very nice house on the River Avon, and that is in their back garden. So that was end of 2020. A couple of minutes after that, sorry, a couple of minutes before that, the camera's attached to a wooden post that's into the ground. If you do use trail cameras, make sure they are attached very firmly, because they will do their best to try and rip them off. Very inquisitive creatures. I've only lost one camera, I think, to an otter where it was on a ground spike and it was underneath the tree. It got pushed into the ground, and I'm quite happy leaving it there. I used it for a good 2-3 years, and I went back one day and the camera had gone. So I think possibly the otter had grabbed it by its teeth, dragged it out, taken it wherever it took it, and that was the last I saw of it. When you do get the camera position wrong, this is generally what happens. This was on Christchurch Harbour, and it was, I think it was a very high spring tide. That's what happens when you come back and the camera's underwater. So I don't bother with any expensive trail cameras. I spend about 40, 45 quid on a trail camera. I use it. If it gets lost, vandalised, flooded, bitten, chewed, whatever, you've only lost the 40 quid. They give good pictures, but it's not really worth investing in one for £300 really. So what do they eat? So this this is the otter here that we saw in the first clip in the black and white. This is this is the female cub that stayed on the same stretch of river. This is on the not far from the Holt. A mixed diet that includes obviously fish, amphibians. So down here we've got crabs, we've got lobster, and we have a fresh fish stall at the quay. They've seen hanging around there for the remains of fish bits and pieces. They're known to take water birds as part of their natural diet. They will take ducklings and birds off the nest, take the bird eggs as well, and then also take freshwater mussels. Bits of I've often found, I think it's a swan mussel down on local stretch where it's been opened and half it's been cracked and opened up and all that. So you can find a good selection of remains of various prey. Sometimes you might find a scattering of fish scales on a flattened bed of reeds or something like that, where they've dragged the fish out of the river and they've eaten it and then they've moved on. There's quite a few signs that are about. This was a surprise. This was on a Sunday morning, so this is the same otter, and this turned out to be a sea lamprey that had travelled up from Christchurch Harbour. I measured this otter at, I think it was 1.15 m from a still image that I got on the riverbank, and the sea lamprey that you can see in the water there was as long as the otter. So the sea lamprey was a fully grown adult, just over 1 metre. She killed it. She kept coming back to it, playing with it. So again, that's something that I've only seen the once. At first I thought it was an eel, because an eel is possibly one of their favourite prey items, but that actually turned out to be a sea lamprey, which is really nice to see. In terms of eating, there's kind of two ways that they hunt. They will either catch a large fish, drag it out to the riverbank, eat it somewhere secluded, like on the reed bed at the top, eat what they want. They normally start with all the protein-rich parts, the livers, the kidneys, and such. I found a couple of fish, largest fish, I think they're both pike on the riverbank, measuring about, I think about 60 centimetres long, where they'd taken their food, eaten what they wanted, and then moved on. The other way of eating is what I call foraging. So they will move upstream, and as they kind of do, they just diving repeatedly, looking for prey items. They normally tend to come up to the surface with something in their mouth and repeat the dive and go back down again. So these are little bullheads and such things like that, stuff that they can easily eat. I was quite lucky with this clip because it was the first time I bought this new video camera. No, sorry. It's the first time I bought this new video camera, so I sat down in the riverbank, and this otter within about half hour literally came over to me. Sorry about that. Get back right. Okay, so this is a clip we don't really see. This is the underwater clip. This was at New Forest Wildlife Park. This is their resident, one of their resident otters called Franklin. So this is part of the enclosure. He's got indoors. He's got an area outside that he comes in, but this is a window. So this is when you can see what I mean about the air bubbles when they get trapped in the coat of the otter as he comes into the water. They also look very, very buoyant as well. When you see them floating there, they float with so much ease. So it's quite nice to see a clip of that under the water. It's not something you see. I've seen it there's a chalk stream near us. I've seen it where they've come up this chalk stream when there's been about 2-3 foot of really clear water. You can follow under the water. We don't often get, we never get eye to eye level with them under the water. So signs that you might find on the riverbank, the obvious one would be to look for would be spraint. They would be in prominent locations, clearly visible for other otters to see. So they would be on the edge of riverbanks, underneath bridges. They would be on perhaps small little wooden bridges where you would cross. They would be on prominent stones on the side of the riverbank. If there was nothing nearby that they feel is prominent enough, they would build, if it's sandy or if it's muddy, they would build what we call a castling. So it would be a little pile of sand or dirt about 2, 3, 4 inches tall, and they would spraint on top of that. So they're called castlings. You will also find, I'd say, remains of prey. You might find what we call a slide, is where on the riverbank on the same areas, because they're fairly they repeat their movements quite a lot. So if there's certain shortcuts and across land, they will use them to cut off a bend in the river if they're moving upstream. And they tend to enter the water in the same area. So you might find that there's little worn sliders that go back into the river. I was once told that they travel downstream in the evening and upstream in the morning, which tends to ring true with me. So an otter in the evening will come downstream, it will travel fairly fast, it doesn't tend to stop very much, we use the current, and it will travel past fairly quickly. They will go down to feed, and during the night, early morning, that's when they tend to travel upstream, stopping more occasionally, foraging, stopping to groom themselves, to dry off, to perhaps rest for 20 minutes on a couch, somewhere quiet, and then keep moving until they find their holes. So this is a few signs of spraint. Top left, one with the pound coin, gives you an idea of what you would generally see. So we've got fish bones, we've got the white bone on the left hand side, where it looks like it's got 5 little sort of fingers on it, is the pharyngeal teeth of a cyprinid fish, like a chub or something. It's a whole mixture of fish bones, fish scales. It will be dark coloured to begin with, turning grey and crumbly as it dries out. The one on the right hand side is a lot older. This is within Christchurch Harbour on a concrete bridge that not many people go across, and it's repeatedly used that site, because you can see from the discoloration onto the stone there. And then the bottom left is something else that we have. It's called anal jelly. So this is like a thick green mucus. I would advise everybody to please smell this stuff. None of it is disgusting, to be honest with you. It's a bit weird, but they all smell kind of quite sweet and quite sort of fishy. It's not a disgusting smell. So if you do see any spraints and anal jelly, just go down on your hands and knees, be careful, and just have a sniff, because it's a smell that you can it's quite a strong smell. And a few times I've smelt the spraint before I've seen it. So I'd love to have a dog that could do this with me, and I can take him around and train him. It would be fantastic, but as yet I haven't got that far advanced. So there's 3 types of spraint. As I said about prominent locations where they were spraint, this is at the same site as the video clip where the otter came out on the Monday afternoon. It's also across the river from a golf course. So this is the bottom of someone's golf club here. That obviously they've had a bad day on the golf course, and being the most prominent thing amongst the leaves and the twigs and the branches is the bottom of his golf club. So that is where the otter has left his mark in the middle there. As the river levels go up, so does the spraint go up. So this area here is normally, the river is normally probably about 5 to 6 foot lower than what it is now. And if you go down the cliff, off the riverbank, it drops off. There's a few stones and you've got the river, but when the river goes high, the spraints go up. So the otter is coming out here and sprainting on that corner there, as the river level drops, the otter doesn't use it. It doesn't, in fact, when the river levels are normal height, he doesn't spray here at all. This is just basically a site for when the river is high. There's another video. So this is probably as close as you can get to an otter sprinting, I think. So this was a fantastic site until they opened up the vegetation to the right hand side to make another fishing swim, because it's really enclosed, it's full of stinger nettles, and it's just like a little sandy bay that the otter would use. It would come out, make the castlings, he'd spraint, and then back in the water. They will spraint roughly somewhere between every 100 to 200 meters, sometimes a bit less. Sometimes it's just a quick wee. Other times it's a bit more. I'll just play that one again. Okay. Here we go. This is the site that I had the camera go missing, so it's very secluded. So I can only think, because there's a tree from the left-hand side that goes right over the top. So this is underneath a large trunk of tree. Here's another clip that I got used to. So there's a large fallen tree, and this is filmed with 3 trail cameras. So we've got one here that will capture the otter as he comes upstream onto the tree. There's another camera to the left, and there's one as he exits the river and swims away. Here we go. So this is 11:15 at night. So this is quite high up on the upper reaches of the otter's territory. So it would be unusual behaviour for that time of night for the regular female to be travelling upstream at 11:15 at night. She would generally be down in the harbour during the evening, spend most of her night down there. So there's every chance that this is the dog otter, the male otter, that's travelling probably lower Stour, possibly the harbour and the lower Avon near me. So they have almost double the amount of range as the female. So he will be covering anywhere with 20-25 miles. So he could go up and cover possibly another couple of territories above where I am. Where I am, there's just the one regular otter. They can be very shy at times, whereas if I go 6 or 7 miles further upstream to another stretch where they got otters, they are seen quite regularly during the daytime, and they don't mind the photographers. So behaviour-wise, you get all sorts. It's no different from people. You get people that like to be photographed, like to be seen out and about, and you get the more secretive people that keep themselves to themselves. And otters like that, there's no real sort of set behaviour patterns. Certainly not now. You get some that will come over and sniff you. You could be out walking a dog, and they still come up to you and come out of the water, have a sniff, and then clear off again. Here's a few spraint samples. In the tubes at the top, various ages of spraint. You can see the grey ones there, where it's the oldest and it's the crumbliest. Going back to the fish scales on the left-hand side. If you do choose to go do this, don't take the whole of the spraint, just take what you need, 25%, leave the rest there. I carry these little test tubes around with me, pop it into there. When you get home, drop it in put some water into it with some biological washing powder, give it a shake, leave it about 48 hours, then rinse it off. And then eventually, when it's clean enough, I've got a USB microscope that I can then take pictures via the laptop. I think it's on FaceTime, and then I can stitch the pictures together to get them this large. So fish scales are fairly easy ones. I'll give you a couple here. The pike kind of have 3 sort of like ridges on the top. Perch will have 6. They're quite easy ones to spot, and they're quite a good size. Obviously, the pike being a big fish and the bigger scales, but they're fairly easy ones to pick out of a spraint. So you do learn. The other one is one of a cyprinid fish that I don't think I've got. Yeah, such things like dace, chub, roach, rudd, things like that. They're all very similar. So here we have on the left, we have some crab shell, which is found down in the harbour, and a vertebrate of a eel. So this is all taken over time, and it's finding websites that you can link it to and find fish remains that other people have catalogued, and you can then just try and match up what you've got to what they've got. The other things are prints, and I'll talk about the castlings again. Prints I don't tend to see that much. You need a fairly undisturbed stretch of riverbank where it's either sandy or fairly muddy. Is one possible thing you could do if you're walking that stretch regularly, is to get a flat piece of wood, is to try and smooth the sand over or smooth the mud over so it's nice and flat, and perhaps do a metre by 50 centimetres, so that when you come back in the following morning you've got fresh prints, and you've got perhaps prints of either just an otter, rats, or a moorhen or something like that, so it's easiest to work out what you've got. The prints on the left were at low tide, so it's almost every time the tide come in it would reset it and the tide would go out. But like I say, print wise I don't see many down here, so it's not something I it's difficult sometimes because they have 5 toes, but you don't always see the 5th toe in the prints, and sometimes the back foot goes into the same footprint as the front foot, so it's difficult to try and get the perfect footprint. I've tried a couple of times when I've gone down with some plaster of Paris that I've had set up, and I've done a couple of castings, but I'm yet to get the perfect footprint. So here's a castling that you can see. Exit point for the otter is straight in front. They will come out, they will build a pile of sand 3 to 4 inches tall, and there was spraint on top. There is, in this site, there is nothing prominent really. It basically comes out of the water in front of you, comes past us and back in again. There is a tree that is sometimes used, but that again is only really at high water levels. So most of the time it is build a castling, and you'll find that when the dogs come down or a fisherman comes through, they will walk over it, not realising what it is, and then the otter comes through, rebuilds it again and repeats. Here's a bit of interaction with a female and 2 cubs on the Lower Avon. So the communication clip that was earlier is on that stretch. So we have an adult there and 1 cub. The other cub is coming from the left in a minute. So the youngster on the left will be doing that, calling the short little pips and squeaks just to see where mum is. They've obviously heard her or him. It comes in from the left. Off again. So she was sat there drying off a little bit, waiting for the other cub to catch up. She then caught an eel. They both wrestled with, having 1 end each. It's like the otter on the left wasn't eating, it was choosing to hold it rather than risk losing all of it, whereas the otter on the right was munching his way through it. Right, a bit about the otter rehabs now. These are down in North Devon, where we've got some pens. So otter rehabs come from, it could be captive bred from other wildlife centres that no longer want them or have the space for them, but majority of them are abandoned otters that come through the winter, autumn time when the river levels are high. They get separated from their mother, and they're found by members of the public whilst out walking. So here is the otter rehab centre here. The area on the left highlighted there are the pens. Maxwell is one that we got from the British Wildlife Centre, but that pen now is, I think, is split into two, so he's only got half of that because there's more pens in there as we've got busier. So the pens are a good size, they're all separate, they've all got interlinking access in between them, so when they come in singles, we like to pair them up because they'll be released in pairs, which gives them a better chance of survival. Here's Ollie, for example, so weighing in at not even half a kilo. They come in, let's say, separated where the members of the public have found them, curled up on a riverbank, or perhaps just calling for mum. Mum's either lost contact with it or been injured or something's happened to her, and the little one's been having to fend for itself. So they come in, they're weighed, they're measured, any veterinary treatment is given. They start off on a milk formula, as they would do from their mother. It's about 4 to 5 months they've gone to the small fish. You see the heat lamp there as well to keep it warm. They haven't really learned to bite at this point, so she's fairly safe with her fingers. So after the milk stage, they've gone to chop that fish, which is mostly trout. We're given health checks when they come in as well. So depending on how old they are when they come in, they're probably kept on average about 12 months each until they've got the ability to fend for themselves. I said earlier about the water. They're not born natural swimmers, so you have to get used to water gradually. So in our bathtub here, they're fairly inquisitive animals, so they will generally go towards water rather than sort of shy away from it. They're quite destructive as well. They will try their best to escape at any chosen point and chew at anything and steal anything. But you say progress the levels. Here we have some CCTV from the rehab place. So there's a couple of the pens. It's got the overhanging fence. Stop them from climbing over. A couple of ponds in there. You'll see an otter in the pond on the right-hand side. Very playful. So the fence in the middle, we can remove the plywood so the otters can get used to each other. There's a gate at the top of the pen on the left where you can remove, and they can come and go, and they can get used to each other. And once they form that bond and they're okay with each other, then we've got 2 otters that can be released back into a suitable site. A bit about a couple of the otters. This is Maxwell. He was arrived from Surrey, from the British Wildlife Centre. This is one that had a fantastic pen. He had, I think, three ponds, a tunnel. You know, they had right life for Riley, but he didn't really come out at daytime. So as far as watching him, it wasn't really possible. So we didn't really see much of him apart from trail cameras, really. He won't ever be released because he's a captive bred one. This is Loki. He's a Welsh one. Found to be partially blind, which wouldn't affect them in the wild as far as hunting goes. I've seen pictures of a totally blind otter, and that was perfectly reasonable weight and size. And that the only problem they would have through lack of eyesight would be if something went to attack them. I suppose they were on a bit of a downside there, but they can live, you know, still a healthy life without any eyesight. This one was released into the wild and it's still doing fine. So as far as release sites go, ideally privately owned land, somewhere where there's no roads, ideally a smaller river or streams, a network of streams so they can move about. They will be taken out into countryside in a box. The box will be opened, everyone will walk away and the otter comes out at its own pace. The local area is camera trapped for a period of time afterwards, just so that we can perhaps get any further sightings and see whether it's coming back at all. But sometimes it's nice just to think that it's gone off onto its own and it's back into the wild and you never see it again and it's living happily. So this would be a typical release site. A couple of examples of my experience from start of the year. This one was further up the River Stour. I got a call from a chap that was out walking one morning with his dog. He saw this otter on the riverbank. I think about 8 o'clock in the morning. It's a January morning, so it was cold. There was no sign of mother. It was squeaking on the riverbank. He called me. I got there about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was about 100 meters further up the river. It was cold out. It allowed me to approach it, put my hoodie over it, pick it up. They need to be observed first if there's a lone otter cub on the riverbank, because mum could literally just gone off and left it for a while. Don't rush in and pick it up. Observe it for as long as possible. Keep checking on it. Give a call out to UK in Devon. We have a network of people that will come out to it and take over. This little chap, I think, unfortunately, didn't make it much past the following day. His body temperature was so low. I don't know how long it had been there for. Probably certainly a good, probably alone for a good 48 hours, possibly. But he got taken to a specialist vet down here, but I think passed away early hours of the following morning. This is another one that I had collected. This one was eating really, really well. I saw some, I think some salmon pieces there. It was very feisty. A little bit bigger than the previous one. So this was collected from a couple that had been out walking on a Saturday afternoon. They'd taken it to their house. I picked it up from them, and I think by the following Sunday morning, it is at the rehab centre in North Devon. So we'd like to get them there as quickly as possible. They are quite happy in a travel cage like that, the blanket slung over them in the darkness. It's probably for 18 hours or so, 14 to 18 hours, and by that time they're at North Devon. Dinsdale is another one that I collected. again from a lady who lived fairly in a quite a remote place. It was about 5 or 6 miles off the main road. It happened to be snowing at the same time as well. I think her dog had sniffed it out when she was out walking. Again, it was a rescue on a Sunday. It's late on a Sunday afternoon. Just as it was starting to get dark. I dropped it off my mum's house, who had it for the night. Again, this one, a feisty little thing. It didn't eat at all, unlike the previous one, but it was certainly alert and it was hissing, which is a good sign. Wasn't interested in any food. I think although I managed to drop the bowl of food in from above. But then this one is then taken over to North Devon the following Sunday morning to the rehab place. So there we go. So here's the UK Watt website page. There's loads of bits and pieces on there for you to read about what to do if you find a live otter cub. Also, if you find a dead one, it's still worth reporting, because certainly pre-lockdown they would be collected by the Environment Agency and were sent to Cardiff University for autopsies. There's loads of bits and pieces on there, how to watch them responsibly, how to follow them, hazards, how to photograph them, how to kind of learn a bit more about their behaviour when you're watching them, whether you back off, things like that. So here's the details there about if you find an otter, or if you find a live or a dead cub. Everything is there. It's always worth perhaps putting a couple of phone numbers into your phone if you're out and about, you do see one, and you haven't got access to mobile signal, mobile internet, so the number's already there. It's either that or phone the local Environment Agency, who will put you onto someone. Here's the adoptions page. There's quite a few at the moment. I think there's about 12 or 14 various otter cubs that we've got. There's a little bit of bio about each one. You can adopt them for, I think, £15, and you get a certificate and a little photograph emailed to you, and some info on where they were rescued, what they're doing now, and such like. And that there concludes the talk, really. That's what I've got to say at the moment. Okay, so back to you, Joanna.
Awesome, thank you, Paul.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Has anyone got any questions after that? I have one. So obviously, like, the Otters really had quite a big success, in terms of its distribution in the UK now compared to 30 years ago, like we were saying. Is there still threats that it faces now?
Yeah, there's still threats. The threats have probably changed a little bit. Road traffic accidents or casualties is high up on the list. Crossing busy roads, a lot of them will come through, like say December, January time, as RTAs. Problems from habitat loss as the population grows, it becomes bigger, more habitat is lost that way. Fishermen aren't always their best friends, so there's been a few sort of otters targeted that way along private fisheries. Plastics, which is something we all know about. Plastics finding its way into the river, breaking down, going into the food chain. That's starting to sort of show signs of appearing. Just sort of things you would think of, really. And
so has the population sort of stabilized now, or is it still growing?
Well, population, they're very difficult to put a number on the population, really. There's been a couple of estimates of about, I think, about 10 to 14,000 in the whole of the country, UK, the majority of them being in Scotland. But it's very difficult because the only way that they've done it previously is through Sprint surveys. They do every 6 months, but all that does is record whether an otter has visited there and left a spraint. doesn't tell you about numbers or sex of the otter or whatever, whether there's more than one otter. So there's no real number on the figures. Possibly in the future, there's people doing it with DNA testing where they can test whether that is a juvenile or an adult otter, whether it's male or female, and get a better picture that way. But at the moment, it's really kind of estimates, and it's very difficult to get an idea on a figure when sometimes a dog walker can see what they think is 3 otters and it's only 1 otter. So the numbers can easily be skewed. So without really focusing on one stretch of river, it's very difficult to know exact populations. I mean, down here, I know the populations on the Lower Avon and the Lower Stour because I follow it so much. So they are what the textbooks tell me. They're not overpopulated. They have a resident female adult on both stretches and a dog otter that passes through occasionally. So that's exactly how it should be.
Anyone got any questions? Chelsea, go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what is the family unit like in terms of, obviously a lot of other animals, when the young get to a certain age, the parents sort of go, right, off you go, and they sort of launch them out of the proverbial nest to go and sort of take over their own territory. But are otters a bit more sort of sociable in terms of, will they put up with their children for a bit longer after sort of maturity?
We find that the males, as the males grow up, they tend to go off and become independent sooner than the females. But from about the age of about 14 months, they will leave their mother and go off on their own. I've seen, well, I've not seen, but I've seen a photograph that was taken down here of what I believe to be the mother and all the siblings meeting up again. And this was after they would have all split. So they will keep in contact with each other, they will recognise each other and tolerate each other nearby. So they've still got that family unit, even though all the youngsters have gone in separate ways. So that's quite nice to see. But yeah, we get to 14, 15 months and the mother will kick them out because it's like any wild animal, isn't it? That is their patch. That is their patch for breeding, for homes, for mates, and they want to protect that for themselves, for future generations. So youngsters are literally kicked out and off they go.
Yeah, so there's no conflict then, as long as it's just a brief visit. You can put up with them in short doses.
Yeah, you might probably find that females you get a transient female that might come through once in a while and it will just literally pass through, keep his head down. It'd be aware that there is another female on that site through finding spraying on the riverbank and whatever, and may just pass through as quickly and as quietly as possible. I've never seen any interaction between that. There's a few patches further upstream from me where it is fairly, where 2 or 3 otters are seen regularly, whether that's because the mums reproduce fairly quickly after the first lot have happened, but I've never seen any interaction. I think they keep their heads down and they get on with it. There will be battles and otters killed through fights for territory and all that. That will happen, but I've not found any otters dead because of injuries from another otter as yet. So that must be fairly rare, I think. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
There's just a question from Al in the chat saying, is there any competition between beavers and otters, like e.g. for habitat, or would they happily coexist in the same river system?
They'll happily coexist. We've had beavers just released down in West Dorset fairly recently, and I think the beavers will do a lot of good for the habitat for otters in terms of the dams, creating structures. Otters might move into a beaver's holt or wherever a beaver lives. So yeah, they will live alongside each other. I mean, there's no conflict for food. It's just conflict for sort of resting places, isn't it? But yeah, they live alongside each other happily. I mean, because the beavers are only just bouncing back down here, as they spread further east, I suppose we will eventually see that for ourselves. But at the moment, they're down near me. They're in West Dorset, and the location is fairly quiet. So I suppose with no interactions as yet.
I mean, from my very limited knowledge of this, like I can happily say that in Canada they lived happily together.
Yeah.
We see them both
I mean,
on the same systems. So
yeah. I mean, further along the coast from me, we've got a river near Bewley, and they have a population of seals. So I'm looking about the interaction between an otter and a seal, whether the seal would attack an otter for whatever reason, I don't know. So that's something I like to look at, but I've got to try and then find where the seals are and then try and find the otter at the same time and watch them both. And that's going to take hours and hours to find the two of those together. So unfortunately, most of that area is private as well. So unless I get to know the landowners and the farm owners and put some cameras out, I'm very unlikely I'm going to find the answer to that really, but I'm certainly going to give it a try.
Could I ask a quick question?
Hi, Grace. Yeah.
Hi. It's quite specific. I just wondered if you knew anything about the impact of groups of wild swimmers on otters.
Well, I suppose it comes under the heading of wild swimmers, paddleboarders, kayakers, boats, anything like that, isn't it? I think without it happening, I mean, there's a stretch down near me. It's in the summertime. It's chock-a-block with people. They have a whole day that is based on dinghies, and about 40 or 50 people turn up in inflatables. I think for instances like that, the otter will just keep their head down. I imagine wild swimming is probably done in ones or twos, is it? Is it larger groups?
It's a large group that comes every Tuesday, and it's quite a small lake.
Right.
And it is, from some of our volunteers, it is having an impact on the birds.
It is, yeah.
Is
that
what we think? But I'm not.
Right.
It's just what I've heard from my volunteers.
I suppose you have to be a bit more cautious during nesting period and stay away from nesting birds and sites like that. But I suppose with otters, they're probably more active at night. I don't think they would be that bothered really. They get used to sort of some of the noise and some of the actions that us humans get and kind of just work around us really.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see a problem unless you're swimming in the middle of the night.
No. Well, they're not. They swim until about 9:30. It's very specific. It's just I'm trying to assess the impact.
Yeah, I would have thought that it would create a problem. The otters would just divert somewhere else, and if they wanted to be there, they just come back later.
Okay, that's really good to know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, guys? I've got another one.
Go on.
So I know that like sea otters have been sort of like, they've been shown to kind of like when they're doing their floating thing on the back and they've like been smashing shells and things like that. Have like these Eurasian otters like had any behaviours that are similar to that, like shown any?
No, nothing is yet. They don't tend to, Eurasian otters don't tend to kind of really float on their backs, as it were. If you see them in the river, they'll almost be upright in the river, so head down, back up out of the river. I've never seen one floating around with its belly showing in the same way that a sea otter does. So I don't think they would that advanced to use stones and bits and pieces like that. I think the jaws of an otter will bite through anything it needs to bite through down here, I think, and that's the way they do things.
Any more questions from anyone? No?
No?
Okay. If you do think of anything else, like feel free to drop me an email and I can forward it on to Paul. Thanks everyone for coming.